Jasmine curled tighter into herself, the faint azure glow of her skin barely illuminating the corroded metal walls of the abandoned storage unit. 3 days without food, with only condensation collected from rusted pipes to wet her parched lips. Her captors had left her here to break her will, chained to a support beam with restraints that bit into her wrists, leaving raw circles of pain. Where the metal met her delicate skin, she drifted between consciousness and the merciful darkness of sleep, her crimson hair matted against her face. The smugglers who'd purchased her from the auction houses of Centauri Prime had grown suspicious when they'd caught her listening to their conversations, memorizing routes, names, and coordinates. Jasmine hadn't meant to eavesdrop initially, but survival had taught her that knowledge was currency. "You're too much trouble," Valdez had said, his voice calm despite the rage in his eyes. "A few days alone will remind you of your place." But Jasmine knew the truth. They hadn't returned because they never intended to. She was a liability now, knowing too much about their operations. Better to let her starve in this forgotten corner of Outpost Epsilon than risk what she might reveal. A distant metallic clang startled her from her dazed footsteps, heavy boots against the grated flooring. Jasmine's heart raced, throat tightening with fear. Had they returned to finish what starvation had started? She tried to call out, but her voice emerged as nothing more than a rasp. The footsteps paused and changed direction, growing closer. Jasmine closed her eyes, bracing herself. Light flooded the storage unit as the door scraped open. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the harsh corridor lights, broad-shouldered and armed. "What the hell?" The voice was deep, rough with surprise. Darius Cole hadn't expected to find anyone alive in this section of the abandoned outpost. He'd been working salvage for 3 years now, stripping derelict stations for valuable components, staying off the grid. This particular station had been quiet. It's perfect for a quick job before moving on. The glow caught his attention first on, ethereal blue, emanating from what he'd initially thought was some kind of emergency light. Then he saw her chained and half-conscious, her strange luminescent skin pulsing weakly with each shallow breath. "Hey," he said, crouching beside her, instinctively reaching for his canteen. "Can you hear me?" Jasmine flinched at his touch, violet eyes opening to narrow slits. Her lips moved, forming words without sound. "Don't worry," Darius said, his voice gentler than it had been in years. "I'm not with them." He examined the restraint sold. Military-grade cuffs? Nothing he couldn't handle. From his belt he withdrew a multi-tool, working methodically at the lock mechanism. Years in the frontier brigades had taught him more than just how to fight. Survival meant knowing how to get out of binds, literal and otherwise. The first cuff snapped open, and Jasmine's arm fell limply to her side. She whimpered, blood rushing painfully back to her fingers. "Easy," Darius murmured, moving to the second restraint. "Getting you out of here." Couldn't explain the protectiveness surging through him. Maybe it was the soldier in him, the part he'd tried to bury beneath years of self-imposed exile. Or maybe it was simply that he recognized something in her eyes, the look of someone who'd been used and discarded, just as he had been. The second restraint gave way, and Jasmine collapsed forward. Darius caught her, surprised at how little she weighed. Her skin felt cool against his arms, her body trembling from exhaustion and hunger. "Valdez?" she whispered, the name barely audible. Darius stiffened. He knew that name everyone in the outer systems did. Renzo Valdez ran the largest smuggling operation in the sector, trafficking in everything from black market tech to living cargo. Former military officers like Darius were offered small fortunes to work security for him. Darius had refused, one of the few moral lines he hadn't crossed. "Did Valdez do this to you?" he asked, helping her drink from his canteen. She nodded weakly, water spilling down her chin. "I know too much," she managed. His roots, his contacts. Darius scanned the corridor beyond the storage unit. The outpost was supposed to be abandoned, but if this woman belonged to Valdez, that could change quickly. Smugglers were territorial, and Valdez's crew was known for their thoroughness. "Can you walk?" he asked, though the answer was obvious. Jasmine tried to push herself upright, her limbs shaking with the effort before she slumped back against him. "Sorry," she whispered. "Don't be," Darius said, making his decision. He gathered her into his arms, her weightlessness confirming his suspicions. About how long she'd been left here. My ship's not far. Need to move. As he carried her through the dim corridors, he felt her fingers weakly grasp his jacket, clinging to him like he was her last hope. Perhaps he was. The thought didn't sit well with him. Darius had failed too many people to be anyone's salvation. "Your name?" he asked, keeping his voice low as they approached a junction. "Jasmine," she answered after a moment's hesitation, as if unused to being asked such a simple question. "I'm Darius." He paused at a corner, listening for any sound that might indicate they weren't alone. "Once we're on my ship, I'll get you food, medical supplies. Why help me?" Her voice was stronger now, tinged with both hope and suspicion. Darius didn't answer immediately. 6 years ago, he'd led a unit of soldiers into an ambush, following orders that had cost most of his team their lives. He'd spent every day since then trying to outrun the ghosts of his decisions, "'cause I'm tired of looking the other way." He finally said, the admission surprising even himself. Jasmine's luminescent skin pulsed slightly brighter, as if responding to his words. "They'll come for me," she warned. "Valdez doesn't lose what he considers his." "Let them try," Darius replied, the old soldier in him. Surfacing through years of carefully cultivated indifference, they reached the airlock leading to his docking. Bay and Darius punched in the security code one-handed, still cradling Jasmine against his chest. As the door hissed open, he heard the distant sound of boots on metal, multiple sets moving with purpose. "Looks like our departure just got more urgent," he muttered, stepping through the airlock. His ship waited beyond the Nomad, an old military transport he'd modified for salvage work. It wasn't much to look at, but it was fast and reliable. Jasmine glanced back fearfully as the sounds grew closer. "They found me," she whispered. "Not for long," Darius promised, carrying her aboard and sealing the hatch behind them. For the first time in years, he felt something other than the numb resignation that had become his constant companion. He had a purpose now, even if that purpose was simply keeping this woman alive long enough for her to reclaim her freedom. Wasn't redemption? He didn't believe in such things anymore, but it was something, and for now, that would have to be enough. The Nomad shuddered as it broke free from the docking clamps, the engines roaring to life beneath Darius's practiced touch. Through the viewport, he watched as figures in dark armor spilled into the bay, raising weapons too late. Plasma bolt that scored the hull, leaving a black smear across the starboard side. "Hold on," he called to Jasmine, who lay strapped to a makeshift bed in the small medical alcove behind the cockpit. He punched the thrusters to maximum, feeling the familiar kick as the ship lurched forward, clearing the outpost and plunging into the velvet darkness of space. The navigation console flashed warning signals, proximity alerts, as the station's automated defense turrets activated. "They're shooting at us," Jasmine observed weakly, her violet eyes tracking the flashes of light outside the viewport. "Standard procedure for this kind of exit," Darius replied, his hands dancing across the controls. "Nothing the Nomad can't handle." He banked hard, weaving through the scattered debris field that surrounded the outpost, using the larger pieces as shields against the turret's tracking systems. A series of rapid calculations later, and he'd plotted a course away from the station, toward the densest part of the nearby asteroid belt. When they were safely hidden among the tumbling rocks, Darius engaged the stealth systems, an expensive modification that had cost him nearly a year's worth of salvage profits. The ship's energy signature dampened to almost nothing, becoming just another cold piece of metal drifting in the void. Only then did he turn his attention fully to Jasmine. She had managed to sit up, though the effort clearly cost her. Her crimson hair hung in tangled waves around her face, and her luminescent skin had dimmed to a pale glow. Despite her weakened state, there was determination in the set of her jaw. "You need to eat," Darius said, moving to the small storage compartment, where he kept emergency rations. "Nothing fancy, but it'll help." He handed her a nutrient bar and a pouch of electrolyte solution. Jasmine accepted both with trembling hands, her fingers brushing against his. The contact sent an unexpected warmth through his arm. "Thank you," she said, her voice gaining strength. "You risked your life for a stranger." Darius shrugged, uncomfortable with gratitude. Valdez's people aren't known for asking questions before shooting. I was saving myself as much as you. She smiled faintly, seeing through his deflection. Still, not many would have stopped at all. As she ate, Darius treated the abrasions on her wrists, applying antiseptic and soft bandages from his medkit. Her skin felt strange beneath his fingers, smooth like polished stone but warm and yielding. The blue glow pulsed slightly brighter wherever he touched. Your people, he said, careful to keep his tone neutral. Never encountered anyone like you before. The Lumina, she supplied. We're from the Eridani system. Not many of us traveled this far into human space. She paused, swallowing hard. Most who do end up like me. Collectibles. Curiosities. Darius felt a flicker of anger. How did Valdez get his hands on you? Jasmine's gaze dropped to her bandaged wrists. I was a diplomatic attach on Centauri Prime. Valdez's men raided our embassy during trade negotiations. Most of my colleagues were killed. I was ... taken. Her voice hardened. It was 14 months ago. 14 months as Valdez's captive. Darius tried not to imagine what that meant, but his years on the frontier had shown him enough of humanity's darkness to fill in the blanks. During that time, she continued, I listened, remembered the coordinates of their hidden outposts, the names of their buyers and suppliers, the access codes to their secure communications. Her violet eyes met his. Valdez thought I was just an exotic pet, too frightened to be dangerous. He was wrong. Darius understood now why she'd been abandoned to die. She wasn't just a runaway slave. She was a witness who could dismantle Valdez's entire operation. That's why they'll keep coming, he said. Not a question, but a confirmation. She nodded. As long as I'm alive, I'm a threat. But if we can reach someone who can use this information, ... Like who? Darius asked. The Frontier Patrol? They are stretched thin across 50 systems, and half their commanders are on Valdez's payroll. There are others, Jasmine insisted. People who've been fighting him for years. A woman named Tessa. Reeves runs a repair dock on Outpost Nova. She helps people like me disappear. Darius frowned. The name was familiar, a whisper among veterans and runners. Can you trust her? More than most, Jasmine replied. She has as much reason to hate Valdez as I do. Before Darius could respond, proximity alarms blared through the cabin. He lunged for the control panel, activating the external cameras. A sleek black vessel cut through the asteroid field, its outline unmistakable. Hunter-class pursuit ship, he muttered. Stealth capabilities, weapons to match. They're not giving up easily. As Jasmine's skin dimmed further, fear evident in her eyes. That's Corvan's ship. Valdez's personal hunter. Darius remembered the stories of former Special Forces operative with a perfect retrieval record. No one escaped Corvan once he had their trail. Well, Darius said, powering up the engines. He's about to lose his perfect score. He guided the Nomad deeper into the asteroid field, using the larger rocks as cover. The hunter ship followed, its superior engines allowing it to close the distance with alarming speed. They're scanning for us, Darius explained, keeping his voice steady for Jasmine's benefit. But the stealth system should buy us some time. A sudden explosion rocked the asteroid to their port side, sending fragments pinging against the hull. Hey there. Not scanning, Jasmine said, gripping the edge of her bed. They're flushing us out. Darius nodded grimly. Smart, but we've got one advantage they don't. He veered toward a massive asteroid, nearly a kilometer across, its surface pockmarked with deep craters. Jasmine watched in alarm as he flew directly toward it, showing no signs of pulling up. Darius, she warned, her voice rising. At the last possible moment, he cut the main engines and fired the maneuvering thrusters, guiding the Nomad into a narrow fissure that split the asteroid's surface. The ship barely fit, scraping against the rocky walls as they descended into darkness. Old mining tunnel, Darius explained, his face illuminated by the glow of the instrument panel. These asteroids were harvested for minerals decades ago. Networks inside are like mazes. Behind them, the hunter ship hesitated, too large to follow. Instead, it circled the asteroid, weapons primed. They'll wait for us to emerge, Jasmine said. Probably, Darius agreed. But not before we're long gone. He pointed to a small display showing a three-dimensional map of the tunnel system. There's an exit on the other side. We'll power down completely, let the asteroid's rotation carry us around, then slip out when we're in their blind spot. As the ship settled into darkness, only the emergency lights and Jasmine's natural glow illuminated the cabin. In the close quarters, Darius was acutely aware of her presence, the soft sound of her breathing, subtle scent of her skin like distant lightning. "You're good at this," she observed. "Running, hiding, at practice," he replied simply. Sat in companionable silence as the asteroid slowly rotated, the minutes stretching into an hour. Jasmine moved to sit beside him in the co-pilot's seat, stronger now after food and rest. "You were military," she said. "Not a question. I can tell by how you move, how you think." "What happened?" Darius stiffened. "That's not a story worth telling. Every day story is worth telling to someone who will listen." She countered gently. Perhaps it was the darkness, the strange intimacy of their shared danger. But Darius found himself speaking anyway. "I commanded a unit in the Frontier Brigade. We were sent to Proxima IV during the border disputes. Told it was a peacekeeping mission." His hands clenched on the armrests. "It wasn't. We were used as bait to draw out resistance fighters. Entire squad, 23 men and women, died because I followed orders without question." "You survived," Jasmine said softly. "Not all of me," Darius replied. "I resigned my commission the next day. Been running salvage jobs ever since, keeping to myself." Jasmine's hand found his in the darkness, her cool fingers intertwining with his. Her touch sent a pulse of warmth through his arm. "Sometimes survival is its own kind of courage," she said. Before Darius could respond, the proximity alert pinged softly. They had reached the far side of the asteroid. He gently withdrew his hand from hers, focusing on the controls. "Time to go," he whispered, powering up the engines to minimal thrust. The Nomad slipped from the fissure like a ghost, using only enough power to clear the asteroid's gravitational pull. On the other side, the Hunter ship maintained its vigil. Unaware of their escape, when they were safely away, Darius plotted a course for Outpost Nova, pushing the engines to their limit. Beside him, Jasmine watched the stars streak past the viewport, her expression thoughtful. "Corvin won't give up," she said. "And Outpost Nova is the first place they'll look for us." "Then we'll be ready," Darius replied, "not letting them take you back." The conviction in his voice surprised them both. Something was changing between them, a connection forming that neither had expected. Whether it was born of shared danger or something deeper, neither could say. But as the Nomad carried them through the darkness toward an uncertain sanctuary, one thing became clear. They were no longer simply a rescuer and a refugee. They were becoming something more, partners, perhaps, the beginning of something neither dared to name. Outpost Nova appeared on the view screen as a sprawling collection of interconnected habitation rings and docking spires, its metal surface glinting in the light of the binary stars it orbited. Unlike the abandoned station where Darius had found, Jasmine, Nova pulsed with life transport ships and personal vessels weaving through designated flight paths. Neon advertisements projected onto the exterior of the commercial districts. "It's beautiful," Jasmine murmured, standing behind Darius's pilot chair. 3 days of proper nutrition and rest had done wonders for her strength, though the shadows of captivity still lingered in her eyes. "It's dangerous," Darius corrected, guiding the Nomad toward the less monitored approach vectors. "Every docking bay has automated security scanners linked to sector-wide databases. If Valdez has flagged your biometric signature," "He has," she confirmed. "But Tessa's dock operates outside the main system. She has her own security protocols." Darius frowned. "You're putting a lot of faith in someone you barely know." "I have good instincts about people," Jasmine replied, her hand resting briefly on his shoulder. "They haven't failed me yet." The touch sent a now familiar warmth through him. Over the past days, he had grown accustomed to these small moments of contact, her fingers brushing his when passing a datapad, their shoulders touching as they reviewed star charts together. Each instance left him increasingly aware of her, in ways that went beyond the mission of keeping her safe. "Transmitting approach codes now," he said, pulling his focus back to the task at hand. "Let's hope your Tessa is as reliable as you believe." A tense minute passed before a response flashed across the communications. Pinola's string of coordinates and a docking authorization that would bypass the main security grid. Darius adjusted their course accordingly. "Told you," Jasmine said. A smile in her voice. They approached a maintenance dock on the station's underside, far from the busier commercial hubs. A magnetic tractor beam guided them into a private bay that sealed immediately after their entry, the atmosphere cycling in with a hiss of pressurization. "Stay behind me," Darius instructed, as they prepared to disembark. He checked his plasma, pistol ensuring it was charged and ready. Jasmine nodded, pulling the hood of the jacket he'd given her over her distinctive hair. Even with the covering, her skin's subtle glow was visible in the dim lighting of the ship's corridor. The airlock cycled open to reveal a cavernous repair dock. Tools and spare parts lined the walls, and the smell of engine oil and heated metal hung in the air. In the center of the space stood a woman tall and lean, with silver-streaked black hair pulled into a tight braid. Her dark skin bore the distinctive scarring of someone who'd survived a ship decompression, a web of pale lines across her left cheek and neck. "Tessa Reeves," Jasmine whispered to Darius. The woman approached with measured steps. Her eyes one natural, one cybernetic scanning. Them both with clinical precision. 14 months, she said, her voice surprisingly soft for her imposing presence. "I thought you were dead, Jasmine." "Nearly was," Jasmine replied, stepping out from behind Darius. "Thanks to Valdez?" Tessa's gaze shifted to Darius, assessing. "And who's your protector?" "Doesn't look like Valdez's usual muscle." "Darius Cole," he introduced himself. "Former Frontier Brigade, now Independent Salvage." "Brigade," Tessa repeated, something like recognition crossing her features. "Proxima 4?" Darius stiffened. "How did I make it my business to know who's coming into my dock?" She cut him off, especially when they're running from Renzo. "Valdez." She gestured for them to follow. "Come, this isn't a conversation for open spaces." She led them through a hidden door into what appeared to be living quarters, sparse, but comfortable, with reinforced walls and multiple security monitors, displaying different sections of the station. "You've upgraded your security," Jasmine observed. "Had to?" Tessa replied, activating a jamming field that hummed softly around the room. "Valdez's reach has extended since you were taken. He has people in station administration now, in customs. Even in the Frontier Patrol." Darius exchanged a concerned glance with Jasmine. "Sounds like nowhere's safe." "Nowhere's," Tessa agreed, "but some places are safer than others." She turned to Jasmine. "What does he want with you? This must be important." "To send Corvan himself." "Information," Jasmine answered, her voice steady. "I memorized everything during my captivity coordinates. Contacts, security protocols, enough to dismantle his entire operation." Tessa's cybernetic I word as it adjusted focus. "Smart girl, dangerous position. Can you help us?" Darius asked. "New identities, transportation, off-station," Tessa said. "For a price. We don't have much in the way of credits," Darius admitted. Tessa's gaze returned to Jasmine. "I'm not interested in credits. I want what's in her head. The same information Valdez is willing to kill for." Jasmine hesitated, looking at Darius. "It's your call," he told her quietly. "It's your information to share." Jasmine nodded slowly. "If it helps bring Valdez down, you can have everything I know. But I need your guarantee that we'll be protected until we're safely away from Nova." "Fair enough," Tessa agreed. "I'll need time to prepare the documentation and arrange transport a day, maybe 2. You can stay in the secure quarters below my workshop. No one knows about them except me." As Tessa led them to a concealed lift, Darius kept his hand near, his weapon. Despite Jasmine's trust in this woman, something felt off. Tessa's cooperation seemed too easy, her interest in Valdez too personal. The quarters were small but comfortable, a single room with a bed, small kitchenette, and private washroom. When Tessa left them with promises of food and supplies, Darius immediately began checking for surveillance devices. "You don't trust her," Jasmine observed, watching him work. "I don't trust anyone who knows about Proxima 4, he replied. finding and disabling a small audio pickup hidden beneath the table. That operation was classified. The only people who know details are either dead or high enough in command to be dangerous. Jasmine sat on the edge of the bed, her luminescence casting soft blue patterns across the walls. She could have been support staff, intelligence, medical. Maybe Darius conceded, satisfied that the room was now secure. She could be playing us. Either way, we stay alert. He joined her on the bed, suddenly aware of how close they were in the confined space. In the quiet of their temporary sanctuary, the tension that had been building between them seemed to intensify. "You don't have to stay," Jasmine said softly. "You've done more than enough already. Once we have the new identities, you could go back to your life." Darius looked at her, taking in the delicate features that had become increasingly familiar to him over the past days. What life? Salvaging junk from abandoned outposts? Drinking myself to sleep every night? "A life without Valdez hunting you," she pointed out. "Without the constant danger I bring." He reached out, hesitantly brushing a strand of crimson hair. From her face, her skin pulsed brighter at his touch, a reaction he'd come to recognize as emotional response. "I'm not leaving you," he said simply. The words hung between them, loaded with meaning neither was ready to fully acknowledge. Jasmine leaned forward, her forehead resting against his shoulder. Darius felt his arms encircled her almost of their own accord, pulling her gently against him. "I haven't felt safe in so long," she whispered against his chest. "Not until you found me." Darius closed his eyes, allowing himself this moment of connection. Her body fit against his, as if designed to be there, her cool skin a counterpoint to his warmth. He felt her hands slide up his back, tentative at first, then more confident as they traced the contours of his shoulders. When she tilted her face up to his, her violet eyes searching, he knew what would happen next, with the same certainty that he knew his own name. Their lips met in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened, years of loneliness and isolation melting away under the heat of newfound desire. Her skin glowed brighter with each touch, illuminating the room as clothing was discarded and exploration became more intimate. Darius marveled at the patterns of light that rippled across her body as he traced his fingers along her curves, each caress eliciting new constellations of brilliance. "You're beautiful," he murmured against her neck, feeling her pulse quicken. Beneath his lips, their joining was both tender and urgent, a mutual claiming that transcended physical pleasure. In Jasmine's arms, Darius found a sense of purpose and belonging that had eluded him since Proxima 4. In his embrace, she reclaimed parts of herself that captivity had nearly destroyed. Afterward, they lay entwined, her luminescence softly pulsing. In time with her heartbeat, Darius traced lazy patterns across her back, his mind both peaceful and alert. "What happens after?" he asked quietly. "If we bring down Valdez? If we survive this, what then?" "Why?" Jasmine propped herself up on one elbow, studying his face. "I don't know," she admitted. "I never allowed myself to think beyond escape. Beyond survival." Her fingers traced the line of his jaw. But now, a sudden alarm cut through the moment. 3 short bursts from Darius's communications device. The warning signal he'd set on the Nomad security system. They were on there, feet instantly retrieving scattered clothing with practiced efficiency. "Someone's trying to access the ship," Darius explained, checking his weapon. The industrial colony of Meridian stretched across the planetoid's bleak surface like a metallic cancer. Processing plants and refineries belching columns of steam into the thin atmosphere. 3 weeks had passed since their narrow escape from Outpost Nova, 3 weeks of constant movement, never staying in one place long enough to leave a trail. Darius leaned against the window of their rented apartment, a sparse single-room dwelling in the workers' district. Through the grime-streaked glass, he watched automated ore carriers lumber between facilities, their massive treads crushing the rocky terrain to powder. "Anything?" Jasmine asked from her position at the small table, where she was encoding the last of her intelligence on Valdez's operation into a secure data package. "Nothing obvious," Darius replied, his eyes continuing to scan the surroundings. "But that doesn't mean we're clear." Since Tessa's betrayal, they'd grown more cautious, more paranoid. They'd abandoned the Nomad on Nova, stealing a maintenance shuttle to reach a transport hub where they'd paid for passage to Meridian using credits from Darius's emergency funds. The industrial colony wasn't their final destination, merely a place to regroup, to plan their next move. "The transmission is ready," Jasmine said, securing the data crystal that contained everything she'd memorized during her captivity. "If we can get this to the right people, ... The question is who those right people are," Darius pointed out, moving away from the window to join her at the table. "Tessa proved we can't trust the usual channels." Jasmine's luminescence dimmed slightly at the mention of Tessa's name. The betrayal still stung. Though they'd discussed it enough to form a theory, Tessa had likely been pressured or paid by Valdez, possibly threatened. It didn't excuse her actions, but it made them understandable. "What about your former military contacts?" she suggested, not for the first time. "Surely there must be someone you trust." Darius sighed, running a hand through his hair, which had grown longer during their weeks on the run. "The brigade isn't what it was," he said. "After Proxima 4, a lot of good officers were forced out, replaced by political appointees. The ones who might help us don't have the authority. The ones with authority can't be trusted." Jasmine reached across the table, her cool fingers intertwining with his. Over the past weeks, their relationship had deepened into something neither had expected, a partnership that transcended their initial roles as rescuer and rescued. Each night spent in each other's arms reinforced a connection that went beyond physical attraction or shared danger. "Then we make our own path," she said, her violet eyes meeting his with unwavering resolve. "We find a way to broadcast this information across every channel in the sector. Make it to public for anyone to ignore. That kind of broadcast would require access to a major communications hub." Darius mused, his tactical mind already considering the possibilities. "The kind with sector-wide reach. Like the relay station on the far side of Meridian," Jasmine suggested. "I saw it on the colony maps when we arrived." Darius nodded slowly. "It's heavily secured, but not military grade. With the right approach, ... He squeezed her hand. "It could work." A soft beep from the security scanner interrupted their planning. Darius was on his feet instantly, checking the device he'd placed near the door upon their arrival. It detected electromagnetic signatures. Common to weapons and scanning equipment, a primitive but effective early warning system. "Someone's in the building," he said quietly, retrieving his plasma pistol from its hiding place beneath the mattress. Armed. Jasmine moved with practiced efficiency, gathering their essential supplies into a small pack. Weeks on the run had taught them both to travel light and be ready to move at a moment's notice. "Maintenance tunnel," she suggested, referring to the access point they discovered beneath the sync unit, their emergency exit. Darius nodded, helping her move the sync cabinet aside to reveal the narrow opening. As she slipped through, he replaced the cabinet, erasing signs of their escape route before following her into the darkness. The maintenance tunnels ran beneath the entire colony, a labyrinth of pipes and conduits that carried water, power, and waste between sectors. The air was hot and thick with the smell of machinery and chemicals, but it provided cover as they moved swiftly away from their compromised hideout. "How did they find us?" Jasmine whispered as they navigated by the soft glow of her skin, which she kept deliberately dimmed to avoid detection. "Could be anything," Darius replied. "A facial recognition scan, an informant, random bad luck. What matters is staying ahead of them." They emerged in an industrial sector 2 kilometers from their apartment. Climbing from a maintenance hatch into an alley between massive processing plants, the constant drone of machinery masked the sound of their movements as they blended into the sparse crowd of shift workers moving between facilities. Darius kept Jasmine close, one arm protectively around her shoulders as they walked. Despite the hood that concealed her distinctive hair, her alien features drew occasional curious glances from passersby. "We need to get off the main thoroughfare," he murmured. "Find somewhere to regroup." Before Jasmine could respond, A public announcement system crackled to life, echoing through the colony's streets. Attention, all citizens. Security lockdown in effect. Identification checks will be conducted at all sector boundaries. Cooperation is mandatory. Darius felt Jasmine tense beside him. Corvin, she whispered. This is how he operates. Seals an area, then conducts a systematic sweep. Then we need to be elsewhere when that sweep reaches us, Darius replied, guiding her toward a less populated side street. They had nearly reached the relative safety of the alley when Darius spotted them for figures in civilian clothing but moving with unmistakable military precision, scanning the crowd as they approached from the opposite direction. Don't look, he instructed Jasmine, keeping his pace steady. But we've got company at 2 o'clock. She didn't turn her head, trusting his assessment. Options. On my signal, we split up, he said, his voice barely audible above the industrial noise. You take the pack with the data crystal, head for the communications relay. I'll draw them off. Meet you there in 2 hours. No, she replied immediately, her fingers tightening on his arm. We stay together. Jasmine, he began, but she cut him off. I won't leave you to face them alone, she insisted. There has to be another way. Before Darius could argue further, a new figure appeared at the entrance to the side street they'd been heading toward, tall and imposing, with a cybernetic eye that glowed faintly red in the shadow of his hood. Even at a distance, Darius recognized the predatory stillness of a professional hunter. Corvin, he breathed, changing direction immediately. Pulling Jasmine toward the nearest building, a massive refinery with multiple entrances and exits. They slipped inside, joining a group of workers returning from their break. The interior was a cacophony of noise and activity, massive machinery processing raw or into refined metals. Steam and heat created a hazy atmosphere that provided some cover as they moved deeper into the facility. The loading docks, Darius decided, guiding Jasmine toward the rear of the building. There should be transport vehicles we can use. They had nearly reached the loading area when alarms blared throughout the facility. Emergency lights bathed everything in pulsing red as security shutters began descending over exits and windows. He's locked down the building, Jasmine realized, her skin pulsing with anxiety. Darius scanned their surroundings, looking for alternatives. Workers rushed past them, heading for designated emergency assembly points, creating chaotic movement they could use to their advantage. This way, he said, spotting a maintenance ladder that led to an upper gantry. The roof might be our only option. They climbed swiftly, reaching the metal walkway that stretched across the refinery's main floor. From this height, Darius could see security personnel entering through the main doors, spreading out in a search pattern. Among them walked Corvin, his movements methodical, unhurried, a predator, confident in the inevitability of his success. The gantry led to a series of catwalks that accessed the ventilation system. Darius helped Jasmine into a large air duct, following close behind. The metal shaft was uncomfortably hot, carrying superheated air from the refinery's smelting operations. But it offered a path to the roof that bypassed the sealed exits. Breathe shallow, Darius instructed as they crawled through the increasingly stifling passage. Conserve oxygen. Jasmine nodded, her skin glowing brighter from the exertion and heat. Sweat beaded on both their foreheads as they pushed forward, the temperature rising with every meter they advanced.
After what?
What felt like an eternity, they reached a vertical shaft with maintenance rungs leading upward. Darius went first, testing each rung before signaling Jasmine to follow. The metal burned against his palms, but he ignored the pain, focusing only on escape. They emerged onto the refinery's roof, gasping in the relatively cooler air. The planetoids. Thin atmosphere offered little relief from the heat rising from the building below, but it was breathable. The relay station, Jasmine said between gulps of air, pointing to a tower visible on the horizon. If we can reach it, ... Soft click behind them froze them in place.